Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Greenleaf webinar. It's all about strategically building and maintaining your audience. So how we can build great audiences, build loyalty, and engage with those audiences on a regular basis. I am very happy to welcome our special guest speaker this month, Jackie Huba. Jackie is the best-selling author of the book Monster Loyalty, How Lady Gaga Turns Followers into Fanatics. One called Creating Customer Evangelists, How Loyal Customers Become a Volunteer Sales Force, and Citizen Marketers, When People Are the Message. Jackie is a Forbes.com contributor who regularly writes about customer loyalty and word-of-mouth marketing. She's also a sought-after keynote speaker, and her work and her ideas have regularly been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Advertising Age magazine, and Business Week. She's an 11-year veteran of IBM, and she resides here in Austin, Texas. We're very excited to have Jackie here to talk about how to build customer loyalty. I work with authors and experts on building their brand and building their audiences, both to support the launch of their book and to support the larger goals for their brands. Very excited to be talking with all of you today. Just a quick note, as we go through today's presentation, we will be live tweeting the presentation. You are invited to tweet us your questions at GreenleafBookGR, at Jackie Huba, and please use the hashtag IdeasThrive for any commentary. We're looking forward to engaging with you and taking questions as we go. You're also welcome to use the chat function within GoToWebinar to send us questions as well. So, getting started, building loyal audiences is crucial for any brand. And really the first question is, why do you want a loyal audience? There are so many great reasons why you as an expert would want a loyal audience. The first one, to me, is that loyal audiences are excited buyers for your new products, your new services. They're excited consumers of your new content. They're the ones who are going to be out there chomping at the bit to get at whatever new products you're putting out there. I think one of the best examples, of course, Apple is sort of a master at marketing, but we all know that there is a core group, and a very large core group, of extremely excited Apple customers. And those folks are the ones who are chomping at the bit when Apple is announcing a new product. They're standing in line to be the first ones to get the new iPhone. They are so excited, and they're also showing off that they were the first ones to buy these products. They were the first ones to get them. Now, of course, we can't all be Apple, but that type of excitement that I think is a really important benefit to building a loyal audience, is that they're going to be the people who are most excited about engaging with your products and services as you roll them out. Of course, loyal audiences provide word-of-mouth marketing support. When we say word-of-mouth marketing, we're talking about a lot of different things. So that can be someone telling their friend that they loved your new book. That can be someone writing a review of your product on Amazon. That can be someone putting a Facebook post up about you. All of those things are word-of-mouth marketing, and word-of-mouth marketing is a very interesting tool because it is one of the most trustworthy types of marketing, right? If I tell my colleague that a book was great, that is going to have a lot more weight than if, for example, my colleague sees a banner ad for that exact same book. And so these loyal audiences provide that level of word-of-mouth marketing support. Loyal audiences can also be somewhat your partner to a certain extent, right? They can provide a test market. They can advise you on things as you're rolling them out. So let's just say as an example that my loyal audience, if I said, hey guys, I have a new presentation, I'd really like your feedback on it. Would you be interested in being the first ones to hear my presentation, and would you mind giving me some of your thoughts? Or, I'm coming out with a new book. Would you read an advanced copy? And if I send you an advanced copy, would you mind reviewing that on Amazon? All of these things, these folks provide a test market. They're the ones who are going to be excited, and they want to participate in your brand. So these are reasons that loyal audiences are extremely helpful. And of course, as you're building an expert brand, sometimes it can feel a little lonely. So having people who have passion and excitement for your brand, having people who are encouraging you, just from an individual perspective, is a really nice thing to have. That passion and excitement, of course, also translates into all of the things that we're talking about here: the word of mouth marketing support, the excitement to go out and get your new products and services, and these folks acting as a test market for you. So there are a lot of reasons to want to build a loyal audience, but the question really is, how do you go about doing that? And the first thing that I encourage experts to do when they're trying to build their loyal audiences is really define that audience, and define it very carefully, because for many experts, your audience could be very wide, right? You could have a tremendously large audience, but what you really want is you want to focus in on the folks who are going to be excited, who are going to be engaged, who are going to talk about you, and who are going to be really interested in what your brand does. So the first question I encourage authors and experts to ask themselves is, who could be part of your audience? So that's for many brands, that's a pretty broad audience, right? It could be a lot of different people. The next question, as you start to try and narrow down and focus your efforts on people who are going to be more important for your brand, is who is most likely to be part of your audience. So let's take an example. If I'm working on a brand that is focused on exercise, how to exercise more efficiently, a lot of people could be part of your audience. In fact, I would say that most of us out there could stand to exercise a little bit more efficiently. But who's most likely to be part of that audience? Well, really, the people who are most likely to be part of that audience are people who work out pretty often, people who are fairly dedicated to their workout, and who are seeking out information about how to do it better. So that's sort of the most likely people who are most likely to be part of your audience. And then the key question becomes, okay, so we figured out who could be part of our audience, who's most likely to be, but who's going to love what you do? That's a different question. So who's going to love what you do in this example of an exercise brand? Well, the people who are going to love what you do are the people who haven't yet figured out how to maximize their exercise, but are really excited about exercise. So maybe it's people who are relatively recent gym members, right? People who've been going to the gym for about a year, and they go 3 times a year, but they haven't gotten to that sort of advanced elite level where they already know everything about how to work out. Maybe it's people within a specific segment. Maybe your content or your expertise is particularly useful for people who are runners. Whatever it is that you can use to narrow down and really focus in on the folks who are going to be in love with you, who are going to be excited, who are going to be your raving fans. That's where you want to spend your time, your money, and your resources, is developing an audience of raving fans, because those are the people who are going to naturally expand your brand and be excited about it on an ongoing basis. My first step, once I've answered those questions, is to start to try to put together a persona. So what person can I think of sort of to base my brand on? So a lot of times you know that person, right? You might already be working with someone who fits your target profile really well, but build a persona that you're thinking about what this person's life is like. What kind of media are they consuming? What are they doing every day? When you start to think of someone, not just as in terms of how they relate to your brand, but also in terms of what the rest of their life is like, what their needs are, what's exciting to them, and what they might not have time for, all of a sudden you're looking at your audience in a much wider way. And you can figure out how to address their needs in a much wider way. So I encourage you to take what you know about your target and start putting that into a persona. Start developing a character in your mind of who your target audience is. And then, once you've taken some of that's going to be based on intuition and assumptions. So the next question is, how do we verify the intuition and the assumptions, right? You don't want to spend your time, your money, your resources on building a brand based on assumptions. You want to verify those. So for major brands, they're using a lot of different research tools. They're using focus groups. They're using surveys. They're using a lot of very expensive research tools, honestly. So what are some of the tools that are going to be more accessible for, me and you building our expert brands? This one might seem really basic, but census data actually has a lot more information than you might think. It's extremely easy to search through, so I encourage you to go to the census website and look for some of the information that might be helpful to you. Maybe some of the information about certain geographies is going to be helpful, people's income levels, education levels. All of that is available through the census, and of course the census is free. Uh, there's also a lot of secondary research out there that you can access free of charge, so it's very easy to get to. Luckily, we live in the day of Google, right? So you can actually get to most of this research very quickly. So for example, if you were interested in learning more about people who eat at high-end restaurants, a few Google searches will help you find probably some articles, likely quite a few different research studies that are free. And some information about those folks. So just doing those basic searches, and I encourage you to think about 3 or 4 search terms to kind of just search as many things as you can. That'll get you a pretty long way into verifying some of your assumptions and some of your ideas about your target audience. As you get a little bit deeper, you'll find there are quite a few syndicated research companies who sell research reports on certain audiences. So if you're interested in talking to that exercise audience, for a few $100s, you might be able to buy a pretty good report that has some very in-depth research about people who are exercising regularly. What are their habits like? What are their lifestyles like? What type of people really are exercising regularly these days? A lot of times you can find those reports for a couple $100s. Sometimes they get up into the several $1,000 range, so it's worth looking around to see what you can find. Free surveys are also a tool that I really encourage authors and experts to use. So for many authors and experts, you already have a small audience who you could tap into for information. Maybe you have 30 people who are a pretty good sample of your target audience. And you would be able to set up a survey for them. I use SurveyMonkey. It's free online survey software. It's very easy to set up and very easy to send to people. And you can ask them to answer some questions. Those questions might be anything from what type of social media are you engaging on to do you like my new logo design? How do you feel about certain words that I'm using in my tagline? Learning more about your audience through surveys can be really effective. And you can ask open-ended questions. People will share a lot of information with you if you ask them to contribute to your brand that way. And then if you want to get a little bit more in depth, in-person interviews are a good way to understand really how someone is feeling about your brand. Now, usually you'll have to offer people something, $50, $100, a gift card, something like that to do an in-person interview. So you might want to limit this to a small group, but you can do in-person interviews with your target market and find out really how they are reacting to different things about your brand and about how they're reacting to the category your brand is in. So if we're talking about that exercise brand again, what are the words that people like to use? Do they like to use words like active and fit, or do they like to use words like healthy? Things like that actually can come out pretty easily in in-person interviews. Once you have this information and you've gathered it all up and you have a strong idea of who your target persona is, that's when you want to start the conversation with them. That conversation can be started in a lot of different ways. It can be started in person at speaking events, at networking events, even at small meetup groups. Those are all great ways to start building your audience or to continue building your audience. Engaging online is huge. You can write a blog. In fact, blogging is one of my favorite ways to engage with your audience on an ongoing basis. You're putting valuable content out there regularly, and people love that. People start coming back and following you and engaging with you more often. Social media is also a really strong tool. Depending on what your audience is, there are different networks that might make more sense for you. So if you're focused on a very business audience, for example, LinkedIn and Twitter tend to be the networks that are most useful. If you're focused on more of a lifestyle audience, perhaps Pinterest or perhaps Facebook might make sense for you. It really depends on what kind of audience you're trying to recruit and where that audience is engaging the most. As you do your research, I encourage you to figure out which social networks are going to be the strongest for you, because you probably don't want to spend the time and the energy to develop all of them. You want to focus on the one or two that are going to be most impactful for you. And then, of course, you can start that conversation through a book, through content, through sharing information with people. So really what you're looking for is to start generating a conversation, a two-way conversation with people, whether that is in person, online, social networks, any way that you can find to connect with them. And now Jackie's going to talk with us a little bit about, once you're making that connection, how do you create loyalty as you are making that connection. So Jackie, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Hey, everybody. To continue on, I've done a lot of research and writing about customer loyalty for the past 15 years, and it definitely is connecting with your loyal customers is definitely the way to go as an author or any kind of brand. Hey, Ashley, I'm just trying to forward the slides. And so my first book was actually called Creating Customer Evangelists. And in that, when you start to look at how to identify who these people are, who are your loyalists, there's a model that I would present to you that you might think about. And that is, when we look at people who are kind of they like what you do, maybe they're satisfied with it, that is not the audience you're looking for. You're looking for, as Ashley said, these people who absolutely love what you do. So when you're trying to spot loyalty or an engaged set of evangelists in the wild, you definitely want to look for these behaviors. You want to look for people who buy from you more than once. These are people who they've bought maybe one product that you might be selling, and then they come back again. So clearly there's some kind of loyalty there. When they start to refer you, if they're mentioning something that you're selling to someone else as a referral, there may not be a lot of passion behind it. It may just be an offhanded referral or comment. Then that is another level of loyalty. I'm referring to this as the loyalty ladder. So what we want to do is we want to bring these people up the loyalty ladder. This idea of evangelism, it really is a referral but has much, much, much more emotion behind it. These people almost feel like they are part of your sales force, even though you've not contracted with them to be that way. They love what you do. They feel compelled to tell other people about the kind of work that you're doing. And if you can get to this level of behavior in your audience, this is pretty amazing. But there is really one other level of loyalty that when you are looking into your audience that you see, you know that you're doing a great job, and that's called ownership. And that is where you see these folks who they actually feel like they have an obligation to help you. They feel like they are part of what you're doing, and they kind of take ownership of that. One of the great examples in the first book, our first book, Creating Customer Evangelists, was if you remember back in September 11th when all the airlines weren't flying for about 10 days, and most of the airlines had to lay off a lot of their folks, a lot of their workers. And Southwest Airlines actually has been profitable every year, had never laid off anyone in their 35-year history. And right after September 11th, they started getting letters in the mail from their customers saying, we don't want to see anyone laid off. Here is a returned flight certificate. Here is a check. It was an amazing sense of loyalty from the customers who are road warriors. They didn't want to see their favorite gate agent laid off, and they knew that was about to happen. And that kind of behavior is pretty amazing. When you can engender that in your audience, that's pretty amazing. So when we're thinking about the kinds of things that we want to see in our loyal audience, you can kind of peg them in these kind of behaviors. And just to explain, again, customer evangelism are these people who buy from you regularly, but they're compelled to tell others. Sometimes I think they can be a little hard to spot in the field. So I wanted to just give you a little kind of personality traits that you might see them do, or behaviors you might see them do. As you can imagine, we said these are people who passionately recommend your company to friends and colleagues. They believe in the organization. They believe in the group of people that they know that are behind the brand. Here's one thing, that when you see somebody purchasing what you're selling as a gift, that is someone that you want to connect with, because clearly they're an evangelist for what you're doing. So if there's a way for you to find out if someone is giving it as a gift, if that's an option on your website, if there's a way to personalize a book for someone as a gift, and you offer that, and when you see people doing it, these are the people that you want to connect with. Here's one that a lot of companies that I've worked with over the years sort of is not intuitive. One of the behaviors that we see from people who are really loyal and who are evangelists are that they provide unsolicited praise or suggestions, because that level of ownership where they feel like they're part of it, they want it to be the best it can be. They want you to be the best you can be. And they are not afraid. In fact, they feel very passionate about things you could do differently. So they will email you, they will comment on your blog, they will say, oh, you should really be doing this. And I think sometimes we as people get defensive and we see that as complainers or whiners. And let me tell you, the research shows that for every person who complains to an organization, there's 25 who don't. So this person's actually taking time to tell you something. And I think it can be kind of hard for us to see that person as wanting to help us versus complaining about us. But they really are like a turn away from being an evangelist. So they want to be heard, make them feel heard. Maybe they do have some insights that would help you, maybe they don't. But when they feel listened to, they actually feel much more loyal. So just think about those people who are kind of giving you suggestions as people you want to care about. If something goes wrong with what you're doing, they're the first people to kind of forgive because they know that that's not really what you do. And we see sometimes people who want to pay these people for word of mouth. They feel like they need to reward them in some way, and they really don't. They don't want to be bought. They don't need cash incentives to talk about your work. They want to be acknowledged. And so that's really all they want to do. So when you're trying to spot who these people are, this is kind of how you will find them in the wild. And as I said, they also want to feel part of something bigger than themselves. And so this is where we're going to get into, like, how do we attract these loyal people who want to be part of what we do? And a lot of this is from my last book, Monster Loyalty, How Lady Gaga Turns Followers into Fanatics. So she does a lot of these things as well as businesses. So I'll take you through some of the ways that she does that as well as these other businesses. The first one is leading with values, which is how do you show people what you stand for? Right? And what I mean by that is, obviously we're selling something, but what is it that we stand for behind that? So we might be selling, as Ashley said, our expertise around working out, but what are we really selling? We're selling people living a better life. And so there's something inspirational in that. And that's the thing that people get emotionally connected with. That's the kind of thing that people want to talk about and tell other people. So we need to step back and say, we're selling X, but we're really selling Y. We're selling this bigger thing, and that's what really attracts people. And it's really not like just a warm and fuzzy idea here. There's been a lot of research around companies that lead with values and that they actually do well in the marketplace. This is some research from Jim Stengel, who was the longtime former chief marketing officer for P&G. And he did a study where he looked at 10,000 companies, and he narrowed it down to 50 who were the top ones that he felt led with their values. He looked at the financial performance of those 50 over a 10-year period, and he was able to see that these 50 outperformed the market by 400%. So what he's showing there is it's a great business strategy to actually showcase your values, and that will lead to long-term success. As I mentioned, I talk a lot in the book about how Lady Gaga does this. She is a longtime proponent of LGBT equality. When she first started out, when she was 19 in New York, she couldn't get booked anywhere, and it was really the gay bars in New York that booked her, and then around the country, pride parades and others were the very first groups to really embrace her, and she kind of never forgot that. So now that she is one of the biggest pop stars in the world, she's really lent her voice to a lot of LGBT issues. She even started a foundation called the Born This Way Foundation. One of her causes is bullying. She was bullied as a child LGBT youth are bullied 6 times more than straight youth. And so this foundation that she started in collaboration with Harvard, she launched it with Oprah 2 years ago. Its idea is to spread this grassroots movement around eradicating bullying and providing a safer, more supportive environment in schools and other places for young people. She even, on her last concert tour, not the Art Pop tour, but the one before that, which was the Born This Way tour to support that album, she actually had these buses in the parking lots of her concert tours, which young people could apply to come on, and there were actually counselors, you could believe it, on the bus who, if any kids needed to talk to somebody about being bullied or other issues, they could, and she was trying to demystify counseling for these kids to tell them, you know what, you can find help. And so this was kind of a very interesting and very different thing that someone would do to help these kids. And this is really the lesson here. You can kind of say what your values are, but how do you demonstrate them every day? One of my favorite companies that does this really well is Method, and they are actually part of the Stengel 50. And when they were started by Eric Ryan and Adam Lowry, they actually started it with the idea that they wanted to be this catalyst for having a healthy, happy home in this category of cleaning products. They believed in the environment. They believed in that you should have cleaning products that are not poisonous to your family, your pets, and everything like that. So that's how they started. Now, very smart to use design. They look amazing. You want to put them in your home. But their whole idea of the company was founded on this sort of emotional thing that we believe in the environment. And so their customers are people who believe in the environment and who are looking for that. And this is a really great example a couple of years ago in 2011 of how customers really connect emotionally. This was an article that talked about during the recession, there were a lot of consumers were cutting spending in their grocery budgets. And after Method had come out, a lot of the big cleaning product companies like Clorox and others had launched their versions of green products, right? Well, during the recession, when these customers were cutting their budgets, what this analyst found was that the large companies, these conventional brands like Clorox, their green versions were getting cut more often in budgets than these niche brands. And the conclusion from this analyst was that the people who were Method customers believed in the environment. They believed in what the company believed. And when you do that, you're not price sensitive. You'll find ways to cut other things in your budget, but you're not going to cut those things that are super important to you, where the customers of the conventional brands just didn't have those same values and that same emotional connection to the company. So just a lesson here that when people believe emotionally in us, you know, they really aren't as price sensitive. This is something that they want in their life and they're not going to cut it out. So some interesting behavior there to think about. And in terms of authors, it's interesting because I use this example all the time from, if you guys know, Simon Sinek, Start With Why, which is one of his first books. And his value, what he stands for, is wanting to inspire people every day to be inspired at work. And he came up with this idea of how to illustrate your values. And so if you're trying to think, how would I do that? Think about this circle. A lot of companies talk about what they do. A lot of companies and people talk about how they do it, but they don't talk about why they do what they do. So the question for you is, why do you do what you do? Isolate that down and showcase your values every day to your customers. So you want to be able to not just know what they are, but to also be able to showcase them and in the ways that you do what you do. Okay, moving on to the next one. When we think about these people who love what we do, we have to find them. And one way to find them is to allow them to raise their hands. So we want to have mechanisms where we invite them to join something, right? This is an easy way for us to find them. It allows them to be seen in the wild and to showcase who they are to you. So one of the companies I think who does this just really amazingly is Mini. And I've been a long-time Mini owner. And I happened to, in Austin, when I first moved here, run into a woman at a party who was asking whose Mini was outside, because she had a Mini as well, and then told me that she ran the Mini fan club of Austin, which I had no idea existed. And I began to research this because I was really amazed. She didn't work for Mini. She was just someone who lived in Austin and loved Minis. And so when you go to the Mini USA website, what you find is 101 Mini fan clubs in the US. And if you're calling from outside the US, there's actually clubs in other countries as well. This just happens to be the US. But what was pretty amazing is that Mini does not run these clubs, yet they want Mini owners to get together and to join something where they can share their love of all things Mini with other people. So they sort of endorse these clubs by having this sort of locator on their website where people can find each other and where they can connect. And Mini knows that the best salesperson for a Mini is another Mini owner, which is why they're very excited for these folks to get together. There's so many things to talk about with a Mini, how to customize it, and so these are great sort of ambassadors and evangelists for them, and they absolutely are embracing these Mini owners clubs. They support them with whatever they need. And so that's sort of their online strategy. But they have a really amazing offline strategy. Every other year, Mini does this great thing called Mini Takes the States. Again, it's something that you can join. And basically what it is, every 2 years, they do a giant trek across the US. This is the one from last year. They went from Boston to San Francisco. It took about 10 days, over 4,000 miles. They had events in every city that you see. People could sign up to drive the whole thing, drive part of it, or just show up in one city and take part in the festivities. And basically, it was like a mecca or a reunion for all things Mini owners. These are where the top evangelists would go, who absolutely love Minis. Sometimes they would get, on average, 900 Minis showing up, Mini owners showing up with their cars just to have fun, to talk about the car, to talk about what they found is a lot of these Mini owners have things in common. They like creativity, they like things that are different, they're kind of quirky, fun people, and so they all have a great time. And what's also amazing about this is that all of this becomes great word of mouth, because you can imagine the Instagram photos, the videos, the tweets, where people are sort of documenting this thing that they're part of, that they joined, and what a great word-of-mouth marketing strategy is to do these events. They last for 2 weeks. There's so much content that is being added to the web, all because Mini was smart enough to realize that we are social people and we want to get together around the things that we love. There were even 400 people, by the way, who drove the entire 2 weeks, the entire 10 days. And I would just ask you, I don't know what car you drive, but would you take 10 days off to go spend it with people who drive the same brand you do? You probably wouldn't. So this is quite amazing. In my book, in Monster Loyalty, I also talk about the 1%ers, like the total diehard rabid folks. They're a very small portion of the entire customer base, but they do things like this, crazy things that you would look at them and think they're weird. But as a expert or as a brand, these are your super core people, and you need to find ways to engage them, invite them to join something where they can raise their hand, right? So that's the idea here. So in terms of authors, I was really impressed. I don't know if you guys know Gretchen Rubin, who wrote The Happiness Project, and great book. And what was so interesting about her, I've not seen a whole lot of authors do this. Over the past couple of years, she will put at the footnote of her blogs and her newsletters, she calls them super fans. She says, hey, really nonchalantly, if you want to be a super fan and maybe help me out with a couple things now and then, send your email to this address. Well, she has now 31,000 super fans who help her with things. So when she redesigned her website, she actually sent them a sort of a beta version of it so they could comment on it. They've helped her with ideas for her new book that's come out after this one. So she has an entire group of people, again, who have raised their hand because she invited them, where they said, yes, I want to help you. It's that whole ownership thing. They want to be part of this thing of what she's preaching about being, about being happy people and living a happy life. They believe in that. She believes in that, and they want to help her with that. And so just by inviting people to be part of a group where they can, just spend a little bit of time helping her with a small project, they're totally happy to do it, and they feel closer to her by doing that. And so that's the idea here. When we think about what it is that we're doing as experts or brands, do we give our audience something to join? Something small, something large, but something where they can volunteer, because those people who raise their hand are going to be our evangelists. Not only are they going to spread the word about what we're doing because they're part of it, they will become even more loyal to us. And so that's the idea here. In Monster Loyalty, there's 7 strategies that I talk about. We only have time for 3, so this is the 3rd one. These people who absolutely love what you do, they love to talk about you. They talk about you all the time, but then after a while, they kind of run out of things to say, to be quite honest. So they're loving what you're doing, but they're really busy and they've kind of run out of things to talk about. So what we need to do is to keep giving them pulses of interesting things that they can talk about. We need to keep doing things that are worth talking about every so often so that they can take that and spread that to the people that they want to know about you. So the idea here is to give them something to talk about. And this is really fundamental word-of-mouth marketing. And I talk about in the book this story that most people don't know about Lady Gaga. I think she's one of the best word-of-mouth marketers that I've ever seen. If I asked you what the top things she ever did that you talked about, it would probably be the meat dress. And there's a whole story about what you don't know about the meat dress in the book. But here's something that you probably didn't hear about, and I think it's a great example of how to give fans something to talk about. And one of the things that we need to know before I go to that story is that there's been some research to show that when we look at a customer base, the research that one company has found is that a very small percentage of a customer base is generating 100% of all the social referrals. So in this research, 4.7, a very small amount. These are the people, the evangelists, the loyalists, are creating all the content socially talking about the brand, which is just another data point of why we need to pay attention to these folks who are our loyalists. So for this Gaga story, she was approached by Coty to do a perfume. And I don't know why all celebrity pop stars need to have a perfume. Apparently that's just what happens. And so when Gaga was looking out there at, what other perfumes were out there that she would, in essence, be competing with, she's looking at stuff like Hidden Fantasy from Britney Spears, or Christina Aguilera has one. Beyonce, of course, has one called Heat, Catch the Fever. This one cracks me up. Katy Perry has one for, I don't know, women who like cats, I guess. I thought this was pretty funny. And even Canada's own Justin Bieber actually has 2 perfumes, and this one actually makes you smell apparently like his girlfriend. So, Gaga doesn't do anything that doesn't have a story or some sort of impact around it, and she told Coty that she wanted a perfume to be called Fame. She's a student of Fame, big student of Andy Warhol. Her first album was called The Fame, and she knows that fame is seductive and evil and alluring, and so she told Coty, I want this perfume to be black in the bottle, but I want it to be spray-on clear. And they told her it couldn't be done, that the science did not exist, technology did not exist to create this. And so she said, well, forget it. And then they realized, holy crap, this is Lady Gaga. They put their scientists to work, and then 6 months later, they actually were able to develop this perfume, which looks like this, black in the bottle, spray on clear. You can see the gold monster claws at the top. And when this came out, it was the first of its kind, had never been done before. Sold 6 million bottles in the first month. It went on to sell 30 million bottles in the first 6 months. Became the fastest selling perfume after Chanel No. 5. Right? And because there was something to talk about there. It wasn't just that this was Lady Gaga's perfume, but it was different. The fact that it was black and this new technology. There was something for her loyalists to tell everyone about. There was something for the news media to report on as well, which is also important. And I really love this. Now, after the giant success, Cody had said that Gaga was really behind the most important innovation in the fragrance industry in the last 20 years. And I love this, and it's really what she was doing was pushing Cody to be creative, to be different, to stand out, to do something different. It's a really, really noisy world out there, and we have to stand out. We have to do things that are different. There's so much going on now with social media and so much content, and standing out is an absolute priority. And so we have to find ways to do that. So as experts or as authors, it's also challenging as well. There's lots of books out there, but how do we stand out? I just wanted to give you a quick example of something that on my second book, when I had a co-author, it was called Citizen Marketers. It came out in 2006. And at that time, we had been blogging for, gosh, I don't know how many years it was. We had about 150,000 subscribers to our blog called Church of the Customer. And what we did to work with our evangelists and to organize the marketing for the book is we actually did a completely crowdsourced book tour. And the idea was we're going to do 40 talks in 40 days as part of our author-organized book tour. And it seemed crazy. Like, how could you do 40 talks in 40 days? That's insane. And I think just the idea of being so over the top really got people interested and excited to be part of this thing. And so we asked our blog readers, we'll go anywhere you want us to go. You just pay our travel, pay for 200 books, and we will not charge our normal speaking fee, which at that time is $15,000. So for these folks who couldn't afford a speaker normally, here was a way for them to, they were very interested in what we were doing, wanted to bring the content of this book to their audiences, to their groups, and here was a way to do it. And it was an amazing success, even beyond my expectations. We sold about 8,000 books. We did 40 dates. It actually took us a little longer than 40 days. It took us, I think, about 2 months, 2.5 months. But what was so great about it was we invited our evangelists to be part of something that was worth talking about, and a way for them to raise their hand and say, yeah, I want to be part of this. And so I just thought it worked really, really well. And just one example of when we do something, we can do a book tour, we can do whatever, but is it something worth talking about? And you have to really put that filter on top of what you're doing. Is what I'm about to do worth talking about, or is it just what everyone else does? Is it just sort of average? No one talks about average. People talk about things that they don't like, they talk about things they love. So we don't want to be in the middle. We have to think about how to do things that are worth talking about. So for you, when we think about that, what is it about what we're doing that is worth someone saying a remark to someone else or evangelizing to someone else? That's really the idea here. So I think I'm running out of time, so just to sum up, some of the ideas about building a loyal audience is really leading with what you believe in, because that attracts people who want to be part of what you're doing. They want to be part of your group. Inviting them to join something so they can raise their hand and identify themselves to you. And as you saw with Gretchen, great ways to help them help you with things that might validate or give you ideas on things to do. And then to continually give them things to talk about, to spread to other people, and spread that word of mouth about what you're doing. So just some ideas there. And I will turn that back over to Ashley now.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Really appreciate those tips. I think those are some great ideas for our authors. We're now open for questions and comments. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat box or feel free to tweet them to us. One question that I got, and I'll share my answer to this one, and then I'll let Jackie chime in as well. One question that I received was, all of this work with the audience really takes a lot of time, and of course, authors and experts are probably very limited on the amount of time that they have to be building this kind of loyalty. So what are some of the tips for managing this time-wise? Some of the ideas, some of the things that I can comment on are, first off, in order to keep engaging with your audience and giving them something to think about and talk about regularly, is repurposing your content, right? So the same content, you don't have to write something new for every single outlet that you're using to engage on. You can be using similar content on your blog as what you're posting on social media, as what you're speaking about when you're there in person. Now, of course, you're going to want to customize that content for each channel, but they'll save you some time to not be constantly creating something completely new. Another big thing is to set aside as much time a day as you can budget for audience management, but really dedicating that time, right? So whether that is 15 minutes and you're going to spend a lot of that on social networks and a little bit answering emails from people who are trying to engage with you, or whether that's you can afford to dedicate an hour every day, whatever you can put focusing on that and making some specific time for it every day, even if it's a small amount of time. Jackie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think those are great ideas, and I think also when you're thinking about social channels, I feel this way, and I talk to a lot of other experts who also feel this way. It can be really overwhelming. There's so many social channels: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, blogging, all of it. How do you deal with it? And I would say find the channel that actually you're best at. And spend a lot of your time there. If you are a great video blogger, if you come across fantastic on video, really put a lot of time into that. You don't have to do every single channel. You don't have to have a presence on every single social media platform that's out there. I would say concentrate on your one and really focus on that, and then maybe add, and then that content can be used on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But I would really or if you're a great writer versus a video person, then maybe blogging and then using that blogging content on your other channels. But I wouldn't say you don't have to do everything. Focus on the ones that really work for you in terms of the mediums that really work for you.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. Another question that we received was, if you don't have time to blog and you don't have time to create content in that way, would Blogtalkradio be a good other example of a way to engage? Really, any way that you're getting your ideas out there can be strong for you, and it depends on how your audience engages as well. I encourage you to figure out if your audience would respond to, listening to podcasts or listening to that talk radio. As long as you're finding a way to engage, to Jackie's point, whatever the best method is for you, and finding a way to connect with your audience, that's what you're really looking for. So absolutely, blogging in and of itself is not necessarily the end-all be-all. Maybe for you, a few minutes a day on Twitter is the right way to do it. Maybe for you, the talk radio is the way to do it. But I think find what you're good at and keep engaging in that way. And Jackie, we had another question come through for you. Is creating a newsletter sign up a good example of a way to invite people to join?
Yes, absolutely. I think when we talk about all of these ways to connect with people on all these social channels, good old-fashioned email is actually a killer app here. People still use email. It's one of the most effective ways to connect with people, and it is absolutely the easiest way to have people join something, because it's easier for them to subscribe. It comes into their email box. It's not 140 characters. You have more room to kind of talk about the things that you're doing, sharing expertise, sharing knowledge. So absolutely, a newsletter is a really good method. And then it really gets into how often do you send it. I recommend, it just depends, but I recommend at least twice a month. Depending on your audience. If they need tips every week, that's great. But a newsletter, super great idea.
Okay. We got another question, and this is, I think, a really great question for a lot of the authors out there. So this was from an author who talked to a book distributor who said that they should stick to just one genre. And this author felt that that was somewhat limiting for their audience. And what are our thoughts on that? So there are a couple of different ways to approach that. So really that question becomes, do you want to build a strong audience in a very small segment, or try to build an audience across a wider segment? Either way can make sense for an author. Usually I would recommend that if you can, sticking to one genre allows you to build up a larger loyal audience who are all interested in the same thing. But that's not to say that some authors, and we have quite a few examples of this here at Greenleaf, have one audience over in a fiction genre, and that's, you know, an audience that they're developing in one way, and a different audience maybe in a nonfiction genre that makes sense for them. I would say that those audiences, you kind of have to dedicate more time to managing that because it might be two different audiences. But there's nothing wrong with going outside into two genres as long as you can manage both audiences well. And we have another question. What are ways that you as a friend of an author can help them without seeming biased? So how can you help your author friends or help other authors who you're interested in supporting without seeming like you're biased? Well, I'll let Jackie speak to this one as well, but my answer is that as long as you're giving honest word-of-mouth recommendations and really talking about what you see as the true benefit that that author is providing, then I don't think you're going to seem biased. So if you're writing a review on Amazon, for example, it's okay to disclaim and say, you know, hey, I happen to know this author, but even in knowing this author, I find that their content is extraordinary, and here's what I like about it. It's always good to sort of put those personal connections up front and be honest and direct about them, but you as the fan of that author can absolutely be a loyal audience member, even though you're a friend as well. Jackie, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think disclosure is really best. We've seen too many stories in the past of authors on Amazon who got a lot of friends and family to contribute reviews, and it just, something about it seems very obvious that you realize who these people are. So disclosure is always good. And as Ashley said, if you're a fan because something that they're doing is changing your life or inspiring you or impacting you, to disclose and say, I am a friend of the author, but I really feel their work has helped me in this way, then you are going to connect with other people who are also evangelists and who will connect with what you're saying about how this person helped them. Obviously, there's a million other things you could do as a friend of the author too, introducing them to different groups where they could speak, or forwarding on, you know, content that the author has created to your networks and saying, I just love what this person does. Again, disclosing that you're maybe a friend. But I think disclosure is the number one key there for sure.
Great. Thank you. And Jackie, this question is probably a good one for you. What is a way that you can give something to talk about, but when you have a small budget, when you're not, you know, you're not Lady Gaga, you're an author, and I think you gave a really good example in terms of your book tour. I thought was a great example of that. Do you have any advice for authors and experts who are looking to do that on a small budget?
Yeah, you know, I think that I don't have specific tactics on exactly what you should do because everyone's content is different. But what I would say is creativity doesn't have to cost a lot. I think the idea here is to come up with really fun, interesting ideas about how to get your content out there. You know, the web loves to talk about things that are funny, things that are different. And so I think when you are doing anything around trying to get people talking, just think about how to do them differently. I mean, when we think about recording a video that might be around a particular topic, how do we introduce a level of fun, a level of joy into what is your content? I think those are the kind of things that get passed along. And so let your creativity flow. You know, have a brainstorm with some of your evangelists that have volunteered to help you with things, to come up with ideas of how to make maybe your book launch really interesting. And you know, there's always sponsors as well. When I launched Monster Loyalty, this was kind of a really interesting idea, but I launched it at a marketing conference, and it was in Vegas of all things, and I was brainstorming with the event organizers, and we actually came up with the idea of literally hiring a female impersonator who does Gaga to end my keynote with a performance with their backup dancers. And we actually found a sponsor who loved the idea. They wanted to stand out. they wanted people to talk about them, and they were very excited to be part of it. And though I didn't have to pay for it, we found a group that was happy to be part of something fun. So asking and partnering with someone who might have a budget to do something fun. People want to be involved in things that are really interesting and fun, and you might be able to find some budget there from a group that is connected to what you're doing. So you don't have to do it all yourself, but I think creativity and something fun and different is where you need to go.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for so many great questions. I think there are a few questions out there, and we'll try to respond to those privately, but actually we're going to have to finish up the webinar here. Thank you so much. Jackie, thank you for being part of this webinar and participating with us. If you're interested in staying connected, and especially following her on Twitter, she has a lot of great tweets out there. If you'd like to learn more from Greenleaf Book Group, you can follow us on Twitter at Greenleaf Book GR. And this is one of a series of webinars. We do looking to build their brands, create new books, etc. So you're welcome to follow us on YouTube. And next month's webinar is going to be about how authors can drive book sales. So please join us. Steve Elizalde from Greenleaf is going to be presenting that one, and he is an expert at driving book sales. So thank you all so very much for attending. Feel free to shoot us an email or tweet at us for additional questions and things that you'd like to know about. Thank you so much.
Thank you.